The security footage shows a young woman's erratic movements in an elevator, pressing buttons frantically, doors refusing to close, gesturing to someone invisible. Then she vanishes. That was the last time anyone saw 21-year-old Elisa Lam alive. Her body was found later in the most unusual place. Welcome to the other side. Welcome to Phobia, a podcast about horror, true crime, and mysterious events. Stories from the darkest corners of imagination, history, and unexplained reality. Each week, we bring you a new horror fiction, a dark crime, or a documented mystery. Some stories stay with you long after they've ended, and that's okay. The good ones always do. I'm Corvin Ash, and this is Phobia. January 26th, 2013. A young Canadian student named Elisa Lam checks into the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. She's traveling alone. On January 31st, she disappears. On February 19th, her body is discovered. What happened in between those dates has become one of the most discussed, dissected, and disturbing mysteries of the internet age. The strange elevator footage, the eerie coincidences, the hotel's dark history, the impossible circumstances of where her body was found. This story has all the elements of a horror movie, except for one crucial difference. This actually happened to a real person, with real family and friends who still grieve her loss. Police reports, autopsy findings, security footage, and personal writings from Elisa herself all provide pieces to this puzzle. Former hotel employees, investigators, and experts in various fields have offered their perspectives. The Cecil Hotel, now rebranded as Stay on Main, still stands, though the dark energy of the place remains unchanged. A content warning. This episode discusses death, mental health issues, and disturbing circumstances. Listener discretion is advised. We'll be exploring theories, but always returning to the facts, because Elisa Lam deserves the truth, not sensationalism. And the truth, as you'll soon discover, is haunting enough. Elisa Lam was born on April 30th, 1991, to Hong Kong immigrants living in Vancouver, Canada. Her birth name was Lam Ho Yi. Friends and family described her as intelligent, passionate about fashion, and an avid blogger. She maintained a Tumblr page called Ether Fields, where she posted about books, clothes, and her struggle with bipolar disorder. In one post from December 2012, Elisa wrote, "I'm going through a relapse of depression. It sucks, but I keep going because I know there are highs and lows." This gives us a glimpse into her mindset, just 1 month before her fateful trip. Elisa was a student at the University of British Columbia. In January 2013, she embarked on what she called her West Coast tour, a solo trip down the Pacific coastline. She visited San Diego, stayed with a friend in San Luis Obispo, and then arrived in Los Angeles on January 26th. Why did she choose the Cecil Hotel? Most likely because of its central location and budget-friendly rates. But the Cecil was no ordinary budget accommodation. Located in LA's Skid Row district, the Cecil Hotel had earned several grim nicknames over its long history. The Suicide Hotel, Hotel Death. Since the Great Depression, it had been the site of numerous suicides, murders, and mysterious deaths. Serial killers Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, and Jack Unterweger both stayed there during their killing sprees. The hotel's location had deteriorated from a vibrant downtown area to one of the highest crime neighborhoods in Los Angeles. By 2013, the Cecil was attempting to rebrand part of its space as Stay on Main, a budget hotel aimed at young travelers, while the Cecil continued operating on different floors. This created a confusing layout where guests from both establishments shared elevators and some facilities. Elisa was assigned to a shared room on the 5th floor, but after complaints from roommates about her odd behavior, she was moved to a private room. The hotel staff later reported that she seemed normal during check-in, but became increasingly erratic as her stay progressed. The Cecil's long, dim hallways, aging infrastructure, and complex layout created a disorienting environment. Water tanks on the roof supplied the building. Access to the roof was supposedly restricted, with alarm-equipped doors and locked passageways. Former employee Maria Lopez, who worked at the front desk, would later tell investigators, "The Cecil had many places where you shouldn't go. Dark corners, maintenance areas, abandoned floors. We always told guests to stay in the designated areas, but the building, it was like a maze." On January 31st, the day Elisa was due to check out, her parents became concerned when their daily calls to her went unanswered. This was unusual for Elisa, who had maintained regular contact throughout her trip. Her parents contacted the LAPD, who began investigating her disappearance. What makes this case particularly haunting is a coincidence that almost defies belief. In 2005, a horror film called Dark Water featured a scene where discolored water drips from hotel fixtures, eventually revealing a body in the water tank on the roof. The character in that film was a young woman named Cecilia. Cecilia. A coincidence that leaves uneasy feeling. What are the odds? And here's another disturbing parallel. Around the time of Elisa's disappearance, a tuberculosis outbreak occurred in Skid Row. The test used to identify TB cases was called the LAMELISA test. Elisa Lam. LAMELISA. Perhaps these are merely coincidences, statistical anomalies in a random universe. Or perhaps there's something more. Something that speaks to the uncanny nature of Elisa's story, the way it seems to echo fictional horrors while creating a new, very real one of its own. The last confirmed sighting of Elisa Lam alive comes from that infamous elevator footage from the Cecil Hotel, recorded on January 31st, 2013. The footage, released by the LAPD to help with the investigation, runs for 4 minutes and shows Elisa engaging in behavior that has been endlessly analyzed, debated, and speculated about. Let me walk you through it, moment by moment. Elisa enters the elevator wearing a red hoodie and dark shorts. She presses multiple buttons, seemingly selecting several floors. The doors don't close. She peers out into the hallway, looking both directions, then quickly steps back in, as if hiding from someone. She presses more buttons. Still, the doors remain open. Her movements become increasingly erratic. She steps to the corner of the elevator, flattening herself against the wall. She exits the elevator, gestures with her hands as if having a conversation or argument with someone not visible on the camera. Her movements are jerky, unnatural. She re-enters the elevator, presses more buttons, exits again, makes unusual hand gestures, fingers splayed, hands moving up and down in front of her body. She steps in and out of the elevator multiple times. Finally, she leaves the elevator completely, walking away down the hallway. Only then do the elevator doors close. The video has a dreamlike, nightmarish quality. It's been viewed millions of times online, spawning countless theories. Was she playing a game? Having a psychotic episode? Being pursued by someone just out of frame? Attempting to escape a malfunctioning elevator? The footage is both compelling and frustratingly ambiguous. After this video, Elisa vanishes completely. For 18 days, no trace of her is found, despite an extensive search that included dogs and a helicopter sweep of the area. Then came February 19th, 2013. Hotel guests had been complaining about the water for days. Santiago Lopez, a maintenance worker at the Cecil, decided to check the rooftop water tanks. He climbed the ladder to the top of one of the 4 large cylindrical tanks and looked inside. Santiago later told investigators, "I noticed the hatch to the main water tank was open and looked inside and saw an Asian woman lying face up in the water approximately 12 inches from the top of the tank. The body was Elisa Lam's. She was naked, with her clothes and personal effects floating beside her in the water. Her watch and room key were among the items recovered from the tank. Let's acknowledge the horror of this discovery." For days, hotel guests had been using water contaminated by a decomposing body. They had showered in it, brushed their teeth with it, perhaps even drunk it. The hotel management claimed they had no legal obligation to inform guests of this fact after it was discovered. But the greater horror lies in the question: how did Elisa get into that tank? To reach the roof, one would need to navigate through locked doors, possibly triggering alarms. To reach the top of the water tank, one would need to climb an attached ladder. To enter the tank, one would need to open a heavy lid, and to close the lid afterward would be impossible from inside. The Los Angeles County coroner ruled Elisa's death an accidental drowning, with bipolar disorder listed as a significant factor. The autopsy showed no sexual assault, no significant trauma, and no drugs other than her prescribed medications, though some of those were at subtherapeutic levels, suggesting she hadn't been taking her full dosage. The coroner's report states, "The decedent was found floating face up in the water tank. The tank measured 4 feet 9 inches by 8 feet. The water was approximately 4 feet 9 inches deep. The hatch to the tank was open. There was no evidence of trauma, and no suicide note was found." This clinical description masks the disturbing reality of what actually happened. Somehow, a 21-year-old woman ended up inside a water tank on a hotel roof, a location that should have been nearly impossible for her to access alone, let alone enter, and then close behind herself. In the days between her disappearance and the discovery of her body, Elisa's Tumblr continued to update with scheduled posts. This created an eerie digital afterlife, her thoughts appearing online even as search efforts continued, even after her body lay undiscovered in that water tank. One of her final posts read, "I don't want to be remembered as a sad, strange person." The investigation into Elisa Lam's death was conducted by the LAPD and the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office. Despite the bizarre circumstances, they determined that no foul play was involved. The death was ruled accidental drowning, with bipolar disorder as a contributing factor. But this conclusion has left many unsatisfied. Let's explore the major theories and the evidence for each. Theory 1. Suicide. Elisa had documented struggles with depression and bipolar disorder. She had been hospitalized for mental health issues in the past. Her Tumblr posts sometimes referenced dark thoughts. However, several factors weigh against suicide. There was no note. Her blog showed she was making future plans, and most significantly, drowning by climbing into a water tank would be an unusual and difficult method of suicide. People who choose to end their lives typically select more straightforward methods. Theory 2. Accidental death during a psychotic episode. Psychiatrists consulted on the case have explained that during a manic episode with psychotic features, a person might engage in behavior that seems bizarre or dangerous without recognizing the risk. Their perception of reality becomes distorted. The elevator video could show Elisa experiencing hallucinations or delusions. Perhaps she believed someone was following her. Perhaps she was playing hide and seek with imaginary figures. Perhaps she sought refuge on the roof and entered the water tank for reasons that made sense only in her altered state of consciousness. This theory aligns with the coroner's findings and Elisa's documented mental health history. It also explains her unusual behavior in the elevator. But it doesn't fully address how she accessed the roof or entered the tank without assistance. Theory 3. Foul play. Some have suggested Elisa was murdered, with her body placed in the tank to hide evidence. The Cecil's proximity to Skid Row meant dangerous individuals frequented the area. Could someone have followed Elisa, attacked her, and disposed of her body in the tank? The lack of trauma on her body argues against violent assault. The toxicology report showed no evidence of date-rape drugs, and the logistical challenges of carrying a body to the roof and placing it in a water tank without being noticed are considerable. Detective Timothy Sanders, who worked the case, stated, "We investigated every angle, interviewed hotel staff, guests, people in the area, reviewed all available camera footage. We found no evidence suggesting another person was involved in Ms. Lam's death." The internet, predictably, has generated more elaborate theories. Some suggest paranormal involvement, that the Cecil's dark history created a malevolent force that claimed Elisa. Others point to government conspiracy, suggesting her death was related to the TB outbreak and the Lam-Elisa test coincidence. A 2021 Netflix documentary series, Crime Scene: The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel, attempted to debunk these wilder theories while exploring the case in depth. The series highlighted how internet detectives and conspiracy theorists had harassed innocent people they suspected of involvement, showing the dark side of amateur investigation. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this case is what it reveals about our built environment. The Cecil Hotel had alarm systems that didn't work, security measures that weren't enforced, and maintenance areas that were accessible to guests. The water tanks that supplied drinking water to hundreds of people were not properly secured or regularly inspected. It took 18 days to find Elisa's body, despite it being in a water tank actively supplying the hotel. Multiple guests had complained about the water. Testing was only done after her body was discovered. In 2015, Elisa's parents filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the Cecil Hotel, arguing that they had failed to make their building reasonably safe. The case was dismissed, with the judge ruling that the hotel had no reason to foresee that someone might enter the water tanks. The Cecil Hotel still stands in downtown Los Angeles, though it's currently closed for renovation. The water tanks have been removed from the roof, but the questions remain, echoing through its empty hallways. The elevator in which Elisa Lam was last seen alive has a peculiar feature. Like many elevators, it has no 13th floor button, that number being considered unlucky. But unlike most elevators, it also has no 14th floor button. In Chinese culture, 14 is considered unlucky because it sounds similar to the phrase, "sure to die." The Elisa Lam case has become a touchstone for how we process mysteries in the digital age. Her elevator footage has been viewed millions of times. Her Tumblr posts have been scrutinized by strangers. Her mental health has been discussed and debated by people who never knew her. What really happened to Elisa Lam in those final hours? Did she find her way to that roof alone, driven by forces only she could perceive? Did someone help her there, with malicious intent? Or was it some combination of factors? Mental health crisis, environmental hazards, terrible luck that led to her tragic end. In death, Elisa became something beyond herself, a mystery, a modern ghost story. But in focusing on the bizarre circumstances of her death, we risk losing sight of her life. She was a daughter, a student, a writer with dreams and struggles and complexities that can't be reduced to 4 minutes of elevator footage. Perhaps what truly haunts us about Elisa's case is not the possibility of foul play or paranormal intervention, but something far more mundane and therefore more terrifying: the failure of systems designed to protect us. Hotels with security measures that don't function, water supplies that aren't monitored, mental health conditions that aren't adequately treated, a young woman in distress who somehow ends up alone on a hotel roof without anyone intervening. We crave closure in stories like these. We want the satisfying click of puzzle pieces fitting together. But sometimes that closure never comes. Sometimes we're left with questions that hang in the air like mist, visible but impossible to grasp. I am Corvin Ash, and this was Phobia, where stories move between reality and nightmare. Thank you for walking this path with me. If you liked this episode, consider following the show or leaving a review. It helps more than you know. You can find Phobia on social media at Phobia Podcast for a glimpse of what's coming next, or to share your own most unsettling stories. Next week, we'll return with something new, a dark case, a mind-bending mystery, or a blood-chilling story. Whatever it is, it will stay with you. Until then, stay safe